Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my review for the first season of High School Musical, the series. And what High School Musical, the series is essentially about is basically we center on the real life East High School. Basically, we focus on a bunch of characters that the movie has existed, but they've always stayed at this high school. And so this character, their new teacher, who's going to be the new theater director, Miss Jen, she comes in and she used to be an extra on the original High School Musical film. And so she realizes that these kids have never done High School Musical as a production at their school before. So she takes it upon herself to make sure that this finally gets done. Now, simultaneously, we also follow the characters of Ricky and Nini. These are two people that used to be a couple, but they've recently broke up after a situation has taken place, and they are very quickly cast as the leads in this musical, so we follow all them around as they try to get through it as much as they can, but also see if this can actually be a success. So, High School Musical, the series. Look, as someone who is a huge fan, and you guys should know this at this point, I'm a huge fan of the original trilogy. It is probably the single-handedly most nostalgic piece of entertainment for me. If you want to talk about just nostalgia in general, that is the first thing that comes to mind. It's something that I've watched countless times as a child, and it's something that I've just always adored. And no, they're not the greatest movies in the world, and even rewatching them, because I decided I'd rewatch them before this series came out. No, they're not perfect movies or anything, but for what they are, I think they're absolutely fun and delightful, and I think they're much more tolerable than the majority of Disney Channel movies out there. And in general, I think that's a series that did a really great job at bringing the musical formula back. I've said it before, I don't think I'd be as big of a musical guy as I was if it wasn't for the High School Musical film. So hearing that they were doing a High School Musical TV show, I was very much on board. But I was also incredibly skeptical because even though I was very excited, you guys can even go back in my anticipated list that I did for like the fall shows, I was still incredibly dubious of this show because I always had that fear that this was just going to be a retread, that it was going to feel forced. This was Disney trying to keep the property and namesake alive, and they weren't really going to do anything that different. So I always had that worry that the show wasn't really going to stick out. It was just going to feel like propaganda in that way. But I'm very happy to report that that is not the case at all. I very quickly fell in love with this show. This is a much different series than you really are expecting, but they did basically the best thing that I think they could have with this series overall, and it just ended up being one of the most entertaining shows that I've watched in a while. But we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And look, I think regardless of how you feel about the first three movies, I think something we can all collectively agree on is how well that film did in ushering new talent. So many great actors emerged from that film, and that's absolutely the case with this series, which is comprised of actual high school age teenagers. These are not adults playing teenagers, which is rare to see in a show like this. These are actually, mostly playing the age that they are in the show, and I thought that was definitely a very bold move. But let's first talk about the biggest surprise of this entire show for me, and that is that of Olivia Rodrigo, who, look, the only thing that I had seen her in prior was Bizarre Vark, and if you guys know, I think that's maybe the most obnoxious Disney Channel show out there. It's just a show that I couldn't stand at all, and she was the main character on that show. I didn't think she had any talent at all, but you put her in yet another Disney property, and she shines here. She is so good as the character of Nini, someone who has been a chorus girl before, but she's always loved musicals, and she's always wanted to, be the lead in more things, and she just does a really great job in the show. She's such a likable lead. She's someone that you really do find yourself getting to care about. I think a lot of people are going to relate to her in that way, and just in general, I found her to be such a great lead here. I really love what she ended up doing. I think that she is definitely one of the characters that you latch on to the most, and I just really love what she ended up doing here. Again, I didn't really think she had much talent at all, but between her acting and also, damn, can she sing! I did not know that she was as good as a singer as she truly was here. Rodrigo just absolutely blew me away here, and I was very impressed by just how good she was in this show. However, for me, the big standout of this entire season is Joshua Bassett as Ricky. Again, another actor that I'm not all that familiar with. I know he's done other Disney Channel stuff, but I don't watch a lot of Disney Channel these days, as you guys know. The only Disney Channel I watch are, like, the Disney Channel movies, and that's because you guys like my reviews of them. I don't watch them because I want to. I watch them because I feel like I have to, you know? Seeing him here, he is so good here. I really love what he did as Ricky. He's so energetic, and you can tell he's having a lot of fun in this role. But he also brings something that I was not expecting from the show, and that's an authenticity. There's something really authentic and real about his performance. There's something that Ricky, as a character, is going through that I can't really get into, but he's facing a lot of drama at home. Let's just say that. He's facing a lot of drama in his family life, and the way that Bassett, really channeled that inner sort of trauma and what this is doing to this character, the stress that it's having on him, I thought was really well done. I was very surprised at how good he was in this show because I thought he was going to be a lot of fun, but he actually went into some really dramatic directions with this character, and I just thought he did a fantastic job here, and him and Olivia Rodrigo have some really solid chemistry for sure. I really liked what they ended up doing with them, and overall, I just thought that he was an absolute delight in the show. I loved what he did here. Another big standout, though, for me was Sofia Wylie as a character of Gina. She starts off and you think she's just going to be like a bitchy character, but she quickly evolves into something much better than that. A character that was far more complex than I really was expecting, and I really like what they ended up doing with her. I thought she was definitely one of the big standouts here. She has a moment in, I believe it's like the 7th episode, that really impressed me, and I really liked what she ended up doing here. And then Matt Cornett as EJ, I thought was also really good. We'll get into his character in a little bit, but I thought overall he definitely did do a really good job. I really like Julia Lester as a character of Ashlyn. I thought she was really great here. The actor that played Big Red, Ricky's friend, I thought that he was just so much fun to watch. Really, all of these actors are great in this show, and that is something that I can definitely say is that the cast really makes this fun, and that's something you need with a show like this. You need a really talented cast, and gratefully, this show has it. Every single one of these actors, I think, are fantastic here. I don't really feel like there was anyone that, like, wasn't into this. Everyone seemed like they were just so happy to be a part of the show. You can clearly feel the chemistry between the entire cast here, and even the adult actors like Mark St. Cyr as Mr. Mazzara, and especially Kate Reinders, who I know is a veteran of the theater and things like that, and she does a really great job as a character of Miss Jen. All of these actors are so great. All of them really do make this show as good as it is, and if they weren't in it, I don't think I would like this show as much, because they really do make it something truly great, and I really loved pretty much everyone here in the acting department. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, because like I said, that was my biggest fear going into this show, especially when it came to the directing. I was hoping that this would not be directed similarly to the movies, and it's really not. Does it have its cheesy moments? Yes. Can it be slightly over the top? Yes. But for the most part, the tone of the show is different from that of the original movies. It feels a little bit more sophisticated. It feels like this is a show that was written for people like me who grew up with the movies and watched the movies as a kid and are excited for the show. And the show very much does recognize that. It's very much for those people, but it also is for people that maybe did not like those movies as much and wanted them to be a little bit more real, and this show is cognizant of that. In fact, the show is very self-aware, way more than I was expecting, and any time that it is, it actually works really well. There's a lot of great, like, irony and things like that. And the comedy they nail very well in the show, but the show also does get a lot more dramatic than the original movies do. And I'm not just talking, like, dramatic as in, like, characters breaking up. Like, no, there's some actual, like, drama that these characters are going through. There's some really hard times that they're going through, particularly the characters of Gina and Ricky. And I thought those moments were handled in a very authentic manner. And I just thought the directing here was really well done in this show. Tamara Davis directed almost every single episode of this show, and I thought she did a really, really great job. I was very impressed by all of the directing here. They really seemed to understand what this show needed to be, and I was definitely really impressed by what they ended up doing with that there. But the writing in this show is what really stuck out to me. And not just because of the showrunner, Tim Federle, who really, you can tell, understood what he was doing. I watched a behind-the-scenes thing where he talked about how they've been trying to do this for a while, but they couldn't seem to get it right, and they finally found the right property. And I can just say right now, it was absolutely the right choice, because the way the show goes about it, a lot of people are going to look at that title, and they're going to think it sounds obnoxious. In fact, I know friends who purposefully did not want to watch this show just because of the title, because they thought it was kind of stupid that they called it that. And when you watch the show, it makes sense why it's called High School Musical, the musical, the series, because half of the show is basically done Office style. It's done like a documentary, and I thought that was a really smart choice for sure, the way they went about it, because it gives us a much better chance to look at these characters, and that is something that I can absolutely say with the show that I think it does 100% better than the original movie. The original movie, I enjoyed the characters. I did. I love Troy, Gabriella, Sharpay, Ryan, Chad, Taylor. I love them all. They're all great. They're all great, but they are very one-note characters. There's not a lot of complexity to them, really. I mean, maybe Sharpay has a few layers to her, but they're not exactly, like, very developed characters. They definitely do go through their own things in the original movies, but compared to the characters we have here, they're nothing compared to them, because the characters here are far more developed, especially when it comes to someone like Ricky. Ricky starts off in a very similar way as Troy, where he doesn't really care about musical theater all that much. He's really just doing it to win back Nene, because they've had, like I said, they've gone through their own sort of setback, and he's not really focused on that. But as the show goes on, you can see that he is really starting to develop a vested interest in it. So yeah, that is similar to Troy. But the hardships that he is facing at home is completely different than anything Troy went through, and they handle it in a very dramatic way. And I'm not going to really get into it right now, but it's very shocking. I was not expecting them to go in the direction they did with his character, much less for them to portray it as realistically as they did, because they do not at all do this in like a over-the-top cheesy way. They handle this in a way that I think people that are going through Ricky's situation will probably relate to. One moment, especially in the 4th episode, definitely sticks out to me. The way they handled that, I thought was perfect, and it was way more raw than I was expecting them to, and I just thought the writing for him was so good. And also, Gina, she's the other big character that sticks out in terms of them doing something that they just couldn't do in the original movies. She starts off, and you think she's going to be the mean girl. You think she's just going to be the girl that is trying to steal Nene's part from her, and she does start off as that, but there comes a point at the, like, halfway through the season where she becomes a lot more than just that. You understand a lot of what she's actually going through and why she is the way she is, and after that, she became one of the best characters of this entire season, and the work that they put just in those two characters alone is leagues above what they did in the original films. And again, I love those original films, but I love them for what they are. I don't love them because they're these great, amazing films. Like, this is actually some excellent character work, and they did some really great stuff with those two characters. And I'm not saying the other characters, they don't do great stuff. With Nene as a character is also really great. She's going through her own thing where, like I said, she is very much in the situation where she's always been in the background, and she's finally starting to come into her own, but she also is kind of trying to figure out who she wants to be. There's a lot of pressure that's mounted on her because of there's a lot of different directions that she can go in, and I thought they handled that very well too. They went into some directions with her character that I really wasn't expecting. Even some of the side characters, they do some really great stuff with characters like Ashlyn and Big Red. They're just able to do a lot more with them, and again, that's the thing that this does a lot better than the original movies, because the original movies, it was really just those core six characters. The other characters were practically just background characters. Yes, they had more to do as the film goes on, but I can't tell you a lot in the original movies about Martha. I can't tell you a lot about Kelsey. I can't tell you a lot about Jason. They were side characters. They were there when they needed them. We knew one or two things about them, not to the extent, but not to the extent of what we get in the show, because even some of the smaller characters, like say Carlos or Ashlyn, we still know a lot about them. There's a lot of time spent with them in the show that I was not expecting them to do. Even characters like Courtney, who you think is just going to be like this SJW type character, she also goes in a much different direction. Every single one of these characters, minus one, which I'll get into, are really well written. Even the teachers, like Miss Jen, for example, she's not just some one-note teacher. There's actually a lot that she's going through, and yes, much of it is played for laughs, and the show is a lot of fun. I do definitely want to say that. The show is absolutely hysterical at points, especially when they're making nods to the original film, but they don't do it constantly to the point where it's annoying, but they do it enough to where it is actually a lot of fun, especially if you're a fan of the original series like myself. I think those jokes will hit you even more. You'll get a real kick out of what they do. But even she was a bit more developed than I was expecting. There's a lot more that she's going through. There's a past that kind of haunts her, and I thought that was really well done. So, again, I think the one thing the show very much does improve upon in terms of the movie are all of the characters. They're far more developed. And again, I'm not saying the characters in the original movies were bad, but they're just not as developed as the ones here, because this is a show. They have more time to get into that stuff, and I thought they really took some great advantage of that here, and that's definitely one of my favorite things about the show, is just by the end, I think the one thing you will all be able to agree on is that you'll really fall in love with these characters. I think there'll at least be one that you end up connecting with, and that's just because of how well they are written here, and I really loved what they did with that. And that's the other thing, like I said, that I really do want to stress on. And I know I brought this up before, but this is not just a High School Musical reference show. Yes, obviously they're performing High School Musical, so by design there's going to be a lot of references. But the show is far more focused on these characters. They're far more focused on the storylines that they're going through and focusing on the new. And I think that is absolutely the right approach, because you're still able to take a property that is well known and not necessarily capitalize on it. That's not what they're trying to do here. They're not trying to just, oh, we're just trying to further the High School Musical property. That is obviously a side agenda, but it's not the main agenda. The main agenda is to do something different, is to tell a new story, but tread some slightly familiar territory. Because yes, like I said, the characters of Troy and Gabriella are present in Ricky, Nini, and Gina. Those three characters do have a lot of similarities to them, but they're also very different. There's a lot more stuff that they're going through. But, like I said, if you're a fan of the original movie, there's a lot of great references and jokes in there that I just think you're going to get a big kick out of, and they just did some really great stuff with the writing here. I was very impressed with that. It's easily my favorite thing about the show is the writing. I just think it's superb here. It gets better and better, I think, as the show goes on. It's definitely the best thing, I think, about the show. In terms of cinematography, there's not a lot they do here that, like, really sticks out to me, but there are some shots that are really well done, and I like the way the show was filmed, the documentary aspect, not used as much as you think it would, but they did a really good job with that, too. I just thought that and there's also some really great recreations from the original movie that I thought they did a really good job with, and I thought that stuff was definitely very well done. But the other big thing I want to talk about is the score. Yes, obviously they use a lot of songs from the first movie, but most of the songs in this show are actually original music, and I loved all the original songs here. There's really only one song that I just did not like at all. and I don't think they did as good of a job with. But other than that, I thought pretty much all of the original songs were great here, and they're almost as good. Some of them, dare I say it, better than the original movie. And I think that that's definitely something else that you'll get a real kick out of, is that you'll hear the songs that you love, but you'll also get to hear some great new stuff, whether it's the quieter ballads that Nini will sing, which one of them was written by Olivia Rodrigo, mind you, who is a really great songwriter, I must say, or the larger group numbers that they have. There's one especially that I just cannot stop listening to, Truth, Justice, and Songs in Our Key. Absolutely love that one. There's another great one that I'm not going to get into because it involves a spoiler, but there's a cameo in one song, and it's just great. So many great original songs here. Again, definitely one of my favorite things of the show. And it's one of those instances where, you know, the second I heard the show was a thing, they had the soundtrack available for you to already pre-order on, like, Apple Music and things like that, because I use Apple Music, I don't use Spotify, I know I'm stupid, but whatever. That's beside the point. They had that available, and every single week they would put out a new song, and it wasn't just hearing the recreations of the original songs, because obviously I love those, hearing those songs from the original movie. It was the new songs that especially spoke to me. And that's when you know a show is doing something great. When the newer songs can stick out more than the covers of the songs that you want to hear. And I think they did a really great job with it. There's just a great mix of old and new in there, which really I think is emblematic of the entire show. The entire show just has such a great mix of old and new and handles all of that just so perfectly. And it's definitely one of my favorite, again, another one of my favorite things about the show for sure. The editing as well, I think, is definitely really good. I will say one of my main complaints with the show, because the show is not perfect, I'll get more into flaws in a little bit, but just getting into right now, I think while this show is very well paced for the most part, I do think that the season could have been just a little bit longer. I think 12 to 13 would have serviced them just a bit more, but considering what they're able to get done in 10 episodes, it's very impressive, and I don't really feel like there was any episode that, like, ran too long or something like that. I never really fell into that problem. Like, sometimes that can happen with streaming services where, like, they really try to overkill things, but I thought Disney Plus did a really good job in knowing that they could extend the episodes, but not doing it just because they could. Like, they extended it because it served the story, and I think they definitely did a really excellent job of that with here for sure. So again, there's a lot that I really do love about the show. I think the show is very well written. I think that the characters are really great. So I will say, though, there are a few things that are holding it back from being a truly fantastic show, like one of the best of the year or something like that. There are just a couple things that do bring it down for me. And like I said, one of them is that there's certain plot revelations that happen in the finale that are effective. They are definitely effective for sure, and they're definitely really good, but I feel like they could have been even better if they would have spent a bit more time on some things. And I don't know if that had to do with, giving one extra episode or just giving a little more time to flesh things out. And I think they could have done just a little bit more there. Overall, that does bring it down. Also, I will say there is one character here that I just don't like, and I haven't brought him up because I just don't like this character. That's the character of EJ, and I can't really get into why I like him without spoilers, which I'm going to get into soon, but let's just say he starts off one way, and I was fine with it. I didn't like at first what they were doing, but I was like, okay, if you're going to keep him like this, then have him, then he'll be like that throughout the whole season. And then he just shifts. And every other character in this show, when they shifted, it felt like a natural shift. With EJ, it legitimately seemed like they had no idea what to do with this character after he makes this shift. There's something that happens in the 6th episode, and after that, it just felt like they had no idea what to do with this character, and I just did not buy it whatsoever. And it wasn't Matt Cornett's performance, because he's definitely doing a fine job. It's not his fault. It's just the character I thought was massively underwritten, and I thought the character in general was kind of all over the place and just didn't really work for me. there were a couple other flaws I had, but almost all of them were pretty much fixed as the show went on. Mr. Mazzara, when he started off, I thought he was going to be this, like, sort of Sue Sylvester-esque type villain where he's just against the arts and tries to, take every opportunity to try to stop this from happening, but he doesn't really go in that direction. And again, I'll get more into that with spoilers and things like that, but that was definitely fixed. So again, there were things that definitely I was worried about, but aside from that, I think the show does a lot right for sure. But with all that said, let's now get into some spoilers because there is a lot of stuff that I actually do have to talk about. And that's not something else I was expecting going into the show. You would think things play out pretty straightforward, but no, that's not the case. So if you have not seen High School Musical, the musical, the series, I really would recommend it. I think this is a show that is going to appeal to both fans of the movie, but also non-fans as well. I think definitely, if you have Disney Plus, seek it out. Definitely worth the watch for sure. But let's just get into it. So where do we really start, honestly? Because there is a lot to talk about here. I think the main thing I want to talk about at first is how well they did with progressing all of these characters and how someone like, say, Ricky starts off and you think you know his arc. You think he's just going to be the the kid that is ignorant, who's entering musical theater, doesn't know what he's doing, and then gets a vested interest in it, and it becomes more than just trying to win back Nini. He actually enjoys what he's doing, and yes, that is the case, and I actually thought they did do a pretty good job with that, with him, studying the musical and getting more into the character of Troy and things like that. I thought that was really well done, but the part I was not expecting of his character, and what I think they handled even better, is all the stuff they did with his parents getting a divorce. Masterfully handled, I have to say. I have no complaints with that whatsoever. I honestly thought they handled it perfectly. When he's late to rehearsal and he tells Miss Jen, I like that she stops just being the over-the-top, like, theater teacher, and just for a second tells him, like, it's okay, like, just go be with your family, like, this is something that you need to deal with, like, I can understand that this is going to interfere with what you're doing, so I like that she let him off and things like that, and I thought that was really the moment. The moment I was talking about, with Joshua Bassett, though, that I think was maybe his best moment, is not just the finale when he sees his mother with that other man, because that's definitely an effective moment. I think the best moment for me, acting-wise, is when he sees his parents fighting, and it's getting really aggressive, and instead of just, taking it, he decides to put the headphones on with the High School Musical music and just try to drown them out. That felt brutally realistic. I have heard so many people who try to do that because obviously his parents are in this very contentious place in their life right now where they know they're at the end of their marriage, things are not good, they're not getting along at all, and you can tell things are just really rough for Ricky, and I really loved where that ended up going, that he really ends up changing because of this. This really puts him through the ringer, and it almost makes him ruin the entire musical. And I've heard a lot of people say that, oh, it's unrealistic what they did, and yeah, they definitely did take some liberties there. Obviously, if you're going to a real high school production, it is highly unlikely that the lead is going to be that choked up that he just isn't there for Act 2. The audience would have had a much bigger reaction. There would have been more notice and things like that. So yeah, that part was not realistic. That part you do have to suspend your disbelief, but I don't really have a problem because I liked where this ends up taking him. Because I'm not gonna lie to you, I at first did have a problem with them getting Ricky and Nini back together so quickly. It felt a bit forced to me, especially when you have the whole moment with Nini and her, basically after she's broken up with EJ, saying that, like, she doesn't want to deal with guys anymore, she wants to focus on herself and things like that. I thought that was going to be her plot for the rest of the season, and it is until the ending, but I thought the show did just enough to get us to justify it. Show that, Ricky did this for Nini. This is his way of finally admitting that he does love her, because that was the whole thing. Remember, they were never officially broken up. It's just when she was with EJ, she just broke things off after that. But they weren't supposed to break up. He just entertained the idea of them taking a pause, and then they did. So I actually think that the show did a lot to get us to see why these two are right for each other and why they are in fact compatible. And I thought they did some really great work there for sure. And it's, but again, I like that that wasn't the main focus. The main focus was getting to see Ricky and Nini on their own first, with Ricky obviously going through this very heavy divorce from his parents, while Nini is trying to discover who she wants to be, that she wants to go to this performing arts school. She wants to venture out and take more opportunities. She wants to be the lead in more things. She doesn't want to just, be quiet, because that's what she's done. She's taken it throughout a lot of her life, and now she's finally speaking up. Now she wants to take those lead roles more. She isn't as afraid to do that, and I thought that was a great furthering of her character. It's from the first episode pretty much, but I like that at the end of the season, she's far more confident. She's successfully played Gabriella, something that she's always wanted to do, and I really loved where they ended up going with that for sure. I thought both of those characters were very well written, and especially at the end where we see Nini and her being contacted by that the dean of that school, and her now realizing that she can go there in the spring. What is that going to do with her relationship with Ricky? How is that whole thing going to turn out? I mean, we don't really know, and I like where that's headed for sure, and I thought they did a really good job with focusing, like I said, on both of those characters, but then also circling back to their relationship, the thing that brought us here. And I do think that one or two more episodes, it would have been just a little bit more effective. But I thought overall they still did some really good stuff there for sure. Going back to characters, the one in a much different direction than I was expecting, I think Gina is the perfect example of that. And EJ is kind of like the antithesis, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but Gina, I thought, in terms of characters that they took in just the perfect direction, I think Gina's the one that comes to mind, because she starts off, and I thought she was just going to be, like I said, just mean girl that's, trying to steal Nini's part the entire season. I thought that was going to be her arc, but then she has that moment with Ricky, and Ricky gets her to really kind of come to terms with what she's been doing, how much she's hurt people, and the fact that these two had a lot in common for a while. I did not think they were going to go in a romantic direction with them. A lot of people thought they were. I didn't really think that's where they were going. I thought it was going to be more just them as close friends and kind of go from there, and I like that they kept it as that. I like that they didn't try to take them in this forced romantic direction. I feel like a lesser show, there would have been a moment where, like, Nini is ready to say something to Ricky, and then he ends up, like, kissing Gina at the end of the season or something like that. So I like that they didn't go there, because this is much better, with them being friends and them having a lot in common. But then there's that moment where we find out that Gina's moved a lot in her life, and that she has to move immediately because her mom's got this new job and she's not going to be able to be in the musical. And so we see that Courtney has to go in her place. Wylie just acted the hell out of that scene. You can really tell everything that she was going through there, and I thought they did such an excellent job with her character, and I like that we end the season with Gina in a place where she's so close with everyone that she's willing to shack up with Ashlyn's family, which I do think that's where that's headed. I think Ashlyn asking her at the end, like, what if it's not just till Christmas break? I think she is asking Gina to move in. I think that's where we're going in season 2, and I'd be so down for that, because we get to see more Ashlyn, but we get to see a dynamic that we didn't really get to see a lot of in season 1. We saw a lot of Gina and Nini, Gina and Ricky. We didn't see a lot of Gina and Ashlyn, and I like that. I'm interested in seeing how that dynamic's going to be, because I think that's a very interesting idea for sure. So I really love where they're heading with her. The complete opposite of how to do that run, though, we go back to EJ, because let me talk about why this character just did not work out for me at all. I do not think they did a good job with him. Look, I was okay at first with him. Just, he starts off and he's like the nice boyfriend to Nini. You think he's fine, and then episode 3, you realize that he's kind of a dick. And I don't think that it is any coincidence that his episode, the one that is solely about him, is the only episode I did not like of this season, because I just don't think they did a good job with either part of his arc. They really rushed him being like the dick, where, like, not only is he stealing Nini's phone, but going as far as to like poison someone so she could have been Marion the librarian. It just was a little too big of a leap to take. It really was. I think they needed to spend a little bit more time giving that some progression. But it didn't really bother me that that was what I didn't like, because I knew I did not like his character. But it didn't hit me why I didn't like him until we got to the 6th episode, when he tells Nini everything, that he had this plan, that he was going to take, Ricky's role, and that he was going to, try to win her back and things like that. And then after that moment, they just have no idea what to do with him. And that's when I realized just how messy of a character this really is. And I think the perfect example of them not knowing what to do with him is in the Thanksgiving episode. This is the episode where there's so much going on for everyone. Ricky's just found out that his mom has a new boyfriend. Nini's trying to deal with this whole performing arts thing. Gina knows she's going to move. What is EJ going through in that episode? He's losing Instagram followers. Yeah, so that alone, I think, is pretty indicative that they just did not know what to do with this character. And I get it at the end that they're trying to have him, like, redeem himself and things like that, but it really, to me, felt like they tried to give him 2 seasons of development in one. It really did. It did not feel like this was a natural progression. Every other character in the show, like Gina or Ricky or Nini or even some of the side characters, even Mr. Mazzara, starting off as just the asshole sort of STEM teacher who wants nothing to do with the arts, who I really thought was going to go in a Sue Sylvester type direction. I did not like what they were doing with him. Even his progression made more sense to me, with him helping out Big Red and him realizing that Big Red is so good at electronics and things like that, and that he has a real knack for that stuff. I thought that worked a lot more than EJ's shift at the end, where he gets Gina to come back, and he's the one who gave her that plane ticket. Here's what I think they should have done with him. And again, I'm not a professional writer, so just take this with a grain of salt, but this is what I personally would have done with EJ to make him a much better character. I think this entire season, him taking Nini's phone, him poisoning that girl who wanted to be Marilyn the librarian, I think that should have been the entire season. I think his whole goal all season should have been him doing whatever he can to try to get Ricky's part. And I think that the finale should have still played out the same, with him getting Ricky's part. But I think there should have been a moment where he just realizes what he's done. And maybe he does something where he convinces Ricky to do it, and, it's not Ricky so much, Ricky isn't the one to really come up with the idea. He's the one that entertains the idea to him. I think that would have made far more sense. And then I think when he's on stage with Nini, he should have like a moment where he just realizes that he's not right with what he did. Then we can see that he is human. He's not a terrible guy. He's just made a lot of terrible choices. And so that's why, and then season 2, that's when you can start the redemption. That's when you can start showing him being a nicer guy to everyone, and maybe coming off as fake and things like that. Kind of doing like what they do with Nathaniel it's a weird comparison, but what they do with Nathaniel in season 4 of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, kind of do something like that, just so his shift feels a lot more natural, because nothing about his character felt natural to me. Nothing about his character felt like this is someone that they know what to do with. It was the complete opposite. They had zero idea of what they wanted to do with him, and that was very disappointing to me. I really felt like they could have done a lot better work with that character. And the moment where Carlos is like confused by his niceties, I was just as confused. And it wasn't a sense where it was funny. It was a sense where it was jarring. And that's why that character just did not work for me. Again, the actor's fine, but the character overall, I just thought was so messily handled, and I don't think there's any moment that, again, showcases that better than what we got at the end, and I think they could have done some much better stuff there. Going back to positive stuff, though, all the other characters I thought were really well written. I love where they went with Miss Jen, where she wasn't just some, very over the top, like, theater teacher. They could have easily taken her in that direction, but no, they really peel back the layers and show this was someone that she's not just doing this because she is someone that was hurt, because she was supposed to be given a line and she wasn't. And I love at the end where they bring her out to say, "Is that the last apple?" I thought that was such a great moment. But I also like they showed that she isn't perfect. There's a lot of shit that she's done, and one of them is that she literally destroyed the whole theater. Her and Mr. Mazzara, they fell asleep watching a movie, and the theater ends up, going into flames. And even though she says at, like, the end of the finale, like, she has big plans for the spring musical, she wants to use Courtney more and things like that, considering the principal now knows what Mazzara and Jen did, I mean, who knows if that's even going to happen now? I guess we'll just have to see where they end up going with that, but who even knows anymore? I'm very interested in seeing where they end up going. Big Red and Ashlyn, I did not expect them to go in that direction at all. Obviously, yes, the Thanksgiving episode happened, but I was not expecting them to rush that relation. But I don't feel like they rushed it at all. I feel like that was actually a natural progression, especially the moment at the end where, Ashlyn finds this note and she thinks that it's EJ that wrote it for her, but it turns out it's Big Red. Just moments like that. They did a really good job with peppering it throughout the season so they can really sell us on the idea of them being a couple and them getting together. And it's going to give a lot. Obviously, we already know Ashlyn's going to have a lot more to do because Gina's probably going to stay with her. But it also gives Big Red a much bigger purpose than just being Ricky's best friend. I think the back half of the season, they did a lot with him to show that there's way more they can do with that character besides that. Where are all these hidden talents coming from? Him being able to tap dance, him having all of this experience with, like, electronics. I mean, there's a lot we don't know about this character, and I'm excited to see what they do with that. And then Courtney, with her being this very talented singer, I'm excited to see what they do. If Miss Jen, I'm assuming she'll eventually get to put it on. Again, there probably is going to be a bit of a hurdle because of what happens and the fact that her job is probably on the line right now. I don't know if the kids are going to have to sing another song to get her out of this, I really like where they went with her as well. Even smaller characters like Carlos, who didn't have a lot, but at least they gave him something with Seb, where they had this relationship with him, where Seb was kind of nervous to come out, but him playing Sharpay made him come out of his shell a little bit, made him realize that he didn't need to be afraid for who he really was. And I just thought stuff like that was such a good arc. And that's the thing, the attention to detail on these characters all were great. There isn't a single character besides EJ that I can think about that I don't think they handled well. I think all of these characters, they at least gave them something to, to surprise us with. They at least gave us something to satisfy us with. And with such a big ensemble, I thought they did some really great work there. I was very worried in the beginning of the show it was just going to be like the Ricky and Nene show, but it very quickly turned into more of an ensemble piece. And I very much enjoyed that for sure. So overall, guys, High School Musical, the series, was way better than I ever could have imagined. It does a really good job, like I said, of honoring the original, but also very much doing its own thing. Its characters are much deeper, much complex. It hits on some issues that I honestly did not think Disney would ever tackle. It's definitely one of the most impressive properties that they've done in a while. It really ushers in some fantastic new talent and went in a direction where I'm generally excited to see where they really are going to take season 2 overall. It's a show that, like I said, I think even if you're not a fan of the original movie, because of how different the tone is, because of how different stuff is story-wise, I honestly do think the show might be able to win you over in the end. It's certainly one of the best times I've had with any show in a while. If it wasn't for those few issues I had, I think this could be a truly amazing show, but as it is, it's still really great. It's a show that really did impress me a lot more than I expected it to, and so for all of those reasons and more, I'm definitely going to give High School Musical, the series, season 1 overall, a B+. So overall, guys, in my review of High School Musical, the series, let me know what you guys saw of the show overall, left your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.